So, welcome for yet another teaching. This time on Chapter 2 of the Moonbeams of Mahamudra. We are on page 47 of the book. And after this overview of how to unite Shamatha and Vipassana, their common causes and the fruit of that practice, now, for sake of clarity, then Dagpo Tashi Namgyal enters into the description of Shamatha in this teaching and Vipassana in the next, separately. Now, fortunately, and on purpose, of course, he has explained us not to separate the two beforehand, but it is easier to explain meditation if one artificially pulls these two aspects of meditation apart, the practice of mental calm and the practice of intuitive insight. But you should always remember that this is just a pedagogical device to make things easier. Normally, they interconnect like the fingers of my hand. They are completely interconnected and should never be pulled apart. There should be no practice without insight and without relaxation and calm. So, always together. Like there should also be no practice without an open heart, which comes from relaxation and insight. So we are now into the Shamatha chapter, and Tashi Namgyal begins with the preparations. This chapter on preparations is similar to the previous chapter on the causes for Shamatha and Vipassana. So the preparations, they create the condition for the causes to become active. We restrain our sense faculties. In order to practice Shamatha, we lower the gaze. We take care that there is no music running or distracting sounds. Actually, it's also very helpful if we meditate in our room that there is nothing in our visual field that reminds us of work to be done. All of that should be put away so that we reduce the triggers for distraction. We settle, we sit down with the intention to be attentive and undistracted. We also prepare our training, our meditation session by not taking too much or too little food, not eating too heavily and not eating too lightly, so that we avoid dullness and agitation through unbalanced eating and drinking. We also take care of good quality of food. I remember Genro Rinpoche insisting a lot. He was talking with the Tibetan term of dung, the dung of food, and he said that for him, the food he ate when he lived with us had very little dung, very little energy compared to the highly energetic food that he was used to in Tibet. Although it was poor food, not very rich, yet it was highly energetic. So whatever you can do in order to have high quality food in good quantities, do that. It helps with meditation. Find a comfortable seat. Comfortable means you like to return to it. It should be such that you feel like this is the place I want to be. It's a good place to develop a clear mind and open heart. And then you sit in a posture enhancing clarity. Now the text talks about the famous 7-point posture, which would be with the legs in lotus or vajra posture and pressing one's, wrists into the groins and then stretching up and so on. I don't have a cushion now, but it doesn't look very relaxed for most people. But I did spend hours and hours in that position, of course, with the meditation cushion and so on, and then everything becomes easier. And if you can do that, if you're actually able to relax in that posture, I even notice it now, automatically clarity comes to mind. Just because of the straightness of the energy channels, the nadis. So use a posture that is convenient, don't overdo it. Don't give too much emphasis to sitting straight. If that creates a tension, you are overdoing it. Sit straight, but in a relaxed way. Find out how that is possible. And change your posture from time to time. There is not one ideal posture. The ideal posture is always the one which fits your present state of mind and helps it to open up, to become clear. So, then, in that posture, breathe slowly without effort. So we are not talking about pranayama exercises here. We are not talking about a way of breathing like I've been taught in other traditions, where you try to balance the upper, the central part and the lower part of your breathing volume, and you have some idea about how it should be. No. Abandon ideas about how it should be. Breathe effortlessly. Don't force, for example, an opening into the belly breathing because you have maybe constriction at the level of the diaphragm, you have maybe fears which are there and you want to push through. No. Relax. Let it happen naturally. The approach of Buddhist meditation here is mostly to let everything happen naturally. By the mind relaxing, then the subtle energies relax and the breathing opens and so on. Slowly breathing without effort. And install yourself in a willingness to tolerate difficulties. This is a preparation for the practice. Yes, I'm willing that this, what I call meditation, training, becomes a challenging situation. Yes? I'm up for it. It's okay. Come. Challenges. Come on. It's okay. If the body shows something, if the mind shows something, it's okay. I'm not sitting down in order to have a nice time. So, different attitude than how most people meditate. Then we establish ourselves in a mental frame with a disregard for worldly possessions and endeavors, pleasures, all the worldly concerns. We can help with that by saying to ourselves, reminding ourselves, and at least now, for this period of time that I intend to train with my mind, then all my worldly undertakings are irrelevant. I will not think about how to be better, to have more things, to be more powerful, to be more loved, and so on. All of this, to avoid criticism, to be praised, and all the so-called worldly dharmas and worldly priorities. All of that is not interesting right now. And with that, we free the situation from so many possible distractions. We go into an attitude of maintaining wholesome conduct throughout our lives, but also now. We settle into just doing what is wholesome. Always going into what is beneficial to ourselves and others. That's our direction. And we apply ourselves with joyful perseverance, with joyful energy. These are the preparations. Now, Dagpo Tashi Namgyal explains the possible objects of meditation. Now, the term objects of meditation, here it starts on page 48, is a little bit misleading because object is not a thing. We don't need to have an object. The object of meditation can also be compassion. The object of meditation can be a visualization. It can also be the illusory or changing nature of phenomena. So it is more talking about where we direct our attention. So focus could be a good point. As we explained before, then not focus in the sense of narrow focus, but just where the awareness goes, in which field it enters. So there are 4 general types of objects of meditation, focus of meditation. We have universal objects. And he explains that we can focus on conceptual representations with an initial analysis. And take a simple example. You take an inspiring quote from a good Dharma book. There's something, for example, a passage which talks about the qualities, the benefits of having the mind abide in its own nature. That is the conceptual understanding of that. The conceptual understanding stimulates our motivation, our inspiration. We analyze, actually we understand, there is an understanding and an analysis of the words, and we relax into that. We can also practice shamatha, for example. I'm in a state of desire. I want my chocolate cookie. And I analyze the conceptual representation of just how much in the past these cookies have given me pleasure, and how short-lasting it is, and how all the different sensory experiences are similar to cookies. And in this way, the conceptual process is one of contemplating the short-lived nature of the pleasure arising from my chocolate cookie. And I can extend that to all the other possible sensory desires which I have. sensual desires. This is a famous contemplation about the impermanent nature of temporary happiness due to sensual pleasure. It's conceptual, but it relaxes the grasping to those pleasures and deepens my wish, my motivation to find more reliable sources of happiness, which is a perfect way to enter into shamatha. So here you have this conceptual focus of mind leading into meditation with an initial analysis. As explained in the last teaching, we can also rest the mind on a non-conceptual representation without analysis. Simply, if I stay in the visual field, anything that allows us to have a focus, no analysis whatsoever, just resting. And that is usually the case also when we meditate with sensations in the body. For example, the famous body scan. Yes, most people have a little naming, labeling going on, like they will somehow tell themselves itching in the neck and warm feeling in the heart, but that's not the point of the body scan, to be labeling. Actually, it's taking the physical sensation as a support for being completely present, no analysis, no labeling, just staying with it. And in this way, moving through the whole body, from the top of the head to the soles of the feet, until a complete presence to all physical sensations develops without the slightest liking, disliking. Completely equanimous, no analysis. We are not analyzing where it comes from, why it happens, how it interconnects and all of that. Nothing. Just taking the moving field of sensations as a support to remain present. No analysis. So a non-conceptual support can be a moving support. Something can happen there, like the breathing, the physical sensations, sounds, but there's no interpretation. There's no additional mental work connected. Generally, among these universal objects, we can direct our attention on what arises. This was the sensations. When we are with the different tingling, stitching, vibrating and so on, warm, cold sensations in the body, without naming them, we are what the author calls a quantitative aspect. So we could make a list, we could make an enumeration of all of what happens. That's meditation objects involved with knowing what arises. And most meditations, they focus on that. Being aware of sounds, physical sensations, visual impressions, being aware of thoughts arising. And then we can shift to how everything arises. This he calls the qualitative approach. The quality of the experience. So we are not interested anymore just what kind of sensations are perceived. Actually, how it is to experience that. How is it to be feeling? How is it to be seeing? How is it to be thinking? So we go to the nature. This focus on the nature of the experience is an excellent support for shamatha. You would normally think that it is an excellent support for insight, which is true. That's the bridge into insight meditation. But because we are staying with the quality of the experience, we are even less distracted by the contents of the experience. So it helps enormously with shamatha. For example, to stay with just how quickly appearances arise and are replaced by the next ones, just the anicca nature, the impermanent nature of the experience, is a fantastic support for calm abiding, not only for insight. And then we have, of course, as a universal focus of meditation, to the fourth point, to repeatedly refresh the intention to accomplish one's purpose. So this is a form of sati, of mindfulness, that remembers the true purpose of one's practice. We might do whatever outer practice, but to remember that all of this is meant to serve for an open heart is like remembering the most essential. And everything else has to adapt to that. So coming back to our basic purpose, our basic intention, the motivation. In the Mahayana tradition we would say coming back to bodhicitta, remembering that. Coming back to those important intentions that motivate us for practice. For example, my most important intention could be to be natural. So coming back to that. Whatever I do, remembering naturalness and settling in that. And that will enable shamatha to become very easy. Then there are objects of meditation which change our attitude and behavior. We want our way to interact with the world to change. Meditation is supposed to generate a transformation. Behavior here means how we interact with the world. So meditating on ugliness, kindness, dependent origination, the way sense perceptions arise with their elemental qualities, the dhatus, and breathing, all of this are objects which change our behavior. Just a few examples. I will go through the list. Where there is strong craving. And here we mean, for example, the very physical craving for a sexual partner. Then, purposely, we meditate how that wonderful partner looks 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters under the skin. How that smells in the toilet. How that partner is when when having a headache, a fever, getting up in the morning, no makeup, whatever, getting old. We meditate that which reduces our strong physical attraction. We are not making the partner bad, we're not doing that. We are just equalizing our overt attraction to exaggerated positive qualities. We are simply directing the mind to all the rest, which is also there. Then we can see if we still love the person, but definitely the physical attraction becomes less. So don't confuse this. This meditation on ugliness is always when there is a strong desire to something we think so beautiful that we're completely hooked on it. We contemplate the true nature of flowers, that they will, how do I say that? Wither, yes. that they will wither. So in the beauty of the blossoming flower, there is the withering flower already included. In the beauty of a child being born, the death is already included. We balance our view of things. Kindness is what we meditate upon when we feel malevolence in our mind. Or when we have a lack of gratitude, we meditate on the kindness of those who take care of us. Or we develop kindness in our own heart. We meditate on dependent origination when we have this conviction that clinging will bring success. For example, we might in our jealousy be convinced if I cling a little bit more, the partner will stay. It will be the cause for more suffering. So dependent origination, starting from lack of awareness, identification with one's own skandhas, one's own way of being in the world, clinging to sensory experiences with the attachment, craving, grasping, resulting from that, leading into all the forms of stress and so on. We meditate on that wherever we are not clear about how we create suffering ourselves. We definitely should always meditate on the way sensory perceptions arise, to be able to know at any moment that what we perceive and how we perceive is a production of our own mental faculties. That no one perceives the world just like me. To destroy that conviction in my perception having anything to do with objective reality. This is underlying all the meditations. We will explore also the elemental qualities of solidity, cohesion, warmth, that means aliveness, and movement in all these sensory processes. We'll explore the spacious nature of the experiences and how all of that colors our experience. There's so much to explore there. How at certain times when we are in a certain mood, we have a definite, for example, we feel a little heavy and stuck, so we have a very great preference for movement and space. When we feel very spacious and light and agitated, we want solidity and so on. You know how all of that interacts. We explore sensory processes, likings and dislikings. Exploring like this, settling on that, entering mental calm due to this balancing view, this is what is meant. It changes our behavior. Actually, our interaction with the world changes due to having a fitting focus for our practice. Then, a third type of objects are those which give expertise in knowing non-self. We become experts in knowing non-self if in our Shamatha practice we meditate on the aggregates, the skandhas. This is usually said to be an insight practice. But actually, to meditate on the ungraspable nature of all sensory perceptions, what we call form, so much relaxes the mind that it becomes completely stable. If we meditate on the ungraspable nature of sensations, of our feelings about what is perceived, it relaxes those impulsive reactions. Shamatha is immediately the result. If we meditate on the nature of distinctions, of our differentiations, comparing with experiences, labeling, knowing, and so on, all of that being unnecessary now in the process of meditation, seeing through the empty nature of those processes, mental calm becomes easy. All these formations, all our emotions, all our wholesome and unwholesome interactions with the world, all these reactions to what comes up in our mind and then which makes the whole film, the cinema, the movie go, all of that, we relax, we see through. So contemplating that, the different states of consciousness, to name also the fifth skandha, to see that states of consciousness are fluctuating. We are going from one sensory awareness, visual for example, to the hearing, to the physical sensations, to thinking mind, and so on. To see this fluctuating film of our existence and not to identify with it anymore gives deep mental calm. So if you are listening now, you are probably just now checking, did I meditate like this? I was maybe not so aware of that connection. And that's the idea of the teaching, to show us there is a connection. Please explore it. Please use the traditional teachings of the Dharma as a support for your shamatha practice, and you will become an expert in non-self. With your shamatha practice, you will lay the foundation for understanding that there never has been a center of the experience, a so-called self. You don't even have to dissolve it. It has never been. Just simply stop reconstructing it. Then, of course, in shamatha practice, we use objects which purify mental afflictions. So these, what we call kleshas, the mental afflictions, they all have to do with our wish for happiness. Whether it's desire, or anger, or pride, or doubts, or jealousy, or not wanting to know, we always think that with this attitude, we are better off. The fear to engage with that, the hope to go there, we always think that somehow we become more happy. So the objects which purify mental afflictions they help us to focus on the various experiences of the six realms. The coarse, the rough experiences of the lower realms, the human realm, animal realm, and so on, and the subtle, the more fine experiences, the calm experiences of the absorptions, the samadhis of the so-called divine realms. We really investigate them. We really look into. We purposely do something that will give us pleasure normally, and we just see, how happy we are when we eat chocolate. Or we look into just how it is to have sex and to be happy then, and how long does it last? What gives lasting happiness? We meditate under all circumstances. And we see, what makes really happy? And what is the passing aspect of that happiness? And we come to very simple conclusions. Whenever the mind opens, without fixation, happiness resides. So, I was offered a piece of chocolate before the teaching. Eating this chocolate can be a very different experience one from the other. If I eat it, become attached to the taste and want more, I have very little happiness. The happiness of tasting it and wanting more is already a wanting, a narrow state of mind. If I eat it, taste it, and at that time let my mind go into its basic openness, no craving for more arises. I've used the sensory experience to enter the basic relaxation of mind that gives a more lasting happiness. But I could do that also without chocolate, if I know the way. This is called objects which purify mental afflictions. They are from the realm of what usually produces a mental affliction, an entanglement. We take them as our support for meditation, we look into it, and we experience a deep mental calm resulting from that experience. And then we are meditating. This is a second aspect to purify our entanglement. We are meditating on all the different aspects of the Four Truths. The Four Truths, the Four Truths of all the Noble Ones, are those facts of life that all Noble Ones discover, all awakened ones have discovered. That for as long as there's no liberation, stress, either very gross stress or subtle stress, is everywhere. The stress of wanting to be someone or not wanting to be someone. That's the cause of suffering. Suffering and its causes. Then all awakened ones have discovered how it is to be free of that stress, that suffering, that dukkha. And they have discovered, they know how to get there, the path. So these are taught by the Buddha in the Satipatthana Sutta as the supreme supports of meditation practice. To meditate on the Four Noble Truths whenever there is stress, to meditate on that, discover the causes of stress, relaxing into that, to discover the growing freedom, to relax into that, and to know the path of how we got there, how we got into this very open state of mind. That's what we are always doing. And to make things easier for everybody, let's make a little break here and start a new video, which will then talk more about Shamatha practice, so it doesn't become too long in one go.